Okay, imagine for a second that your job literally puts you in harm's way every single day. You're out there guarding the frontiers of your nation, and you're separated from your family for months on end. Now, imagine you finally get to come home, but you've only got a strict 30-day window, just 30 days. How would you spend that time? Better yet, how would your family process the absolute emotional whiplash of your return, knowing that the clock is already ticking down to your departure? Well, welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a deeply moving story about a soldier named Subodh and his family. We're going to use their journey to unpack a huge piece of human psychology, how we process finite time, how we handle the anxiety of the unknown, and most importantly, how we can actually consciously choose happiness over fear. Let's get into it. To break this all down, we'll be looking at 4 key areas today. First, the contrast of presence. Second, the anatomy of anxiety. Third, the illusion of safety. And finally, choosing happiness over fear. So, starting off with section 1, the contrast of presence, or how we choose to spend our finite time. Let's set the stage here. We have Subodh. He's a decorated armed forces officer whose whole life is really defined by service and sacrifice. He spends the vast majority of his time out on the harsh frontiers, keeping his country safe. But right now, he's on leave. He gets exactly 1 month at home, 30 days. That is a highly specific, very finite window of time to reconnect with his wife, Sonia, and his 13-year-old daughter, Vidhi. And when you have exactly 30 days, every single hour carries an immense amount of weight. And this brings us right to a truly fascinating psychological contrast. On one side, we have Sandhya's approach. She is just thrilled, and she immediately springs into action to maximize joy in the present moment. She's planning movies, organizing get-togethers with friends, and interestingly enough, she decides it's the perfect time to replace their 15-year-old car. But she deliberately draws out the whole buying process just so they can debate it and experience the journey together. It's brilliant, really. She takes a mundane chore and turns it into an excuse for deep connection. She's totally anchoring them in the present. But then, there's 13-year-old Vidhi. Every morning, Vidhi greets her dad with a hug, but her words are heartbreaking. She says, "Only 29 days left of having you here. I'm already missing you." And the next day, only 28 days left. So while Sandhya is orchestrating joy right now, Vidhi is literally robbing herself of the present by counting down to a dreaded future. She's manifesting grief before the loss has even happened. Which leads us perfectly into section 2, the anatomy of anxiety and how focusing on the future destroys the present. At first, Subodh kind of just lets his daughter's comments slide. But as she repeats this countdown day in and day out, he finally steps in. He asks her, "Why are you not in the present moment, Vidhi? By saying this, you are creating unhappiness in the current moment and will spread the unhappiness to others." Subodh acutely recognizes the mechanics of anxiety here. By fixating on his inevitable departure, Vidhi isn't just ruining her own day, she's actively generating unhappiness right now, in a moment that should be filled with joy. And the thing is, anxiety is contagious, right? If she keeps focusing on the goodbye, that heavy, anxious energy is absolutely going to spread to him and to her mom. But hey, we have to be fair to Vidhi here. It is absolutely crucial to note that her anxiety isn't just coming out of nowhere. It's rooted in very real, tangible fears. She's actively reading the news, tracking border attacks in the areas where her dad is stationed, and on a much more intimate level, she carries the tragic memory of her friend Rakshit, whose father was also a soldier and, tragically, never made it back home. For a 13-year-old, this isn't some abstract paranoia. It's pattern recognition. She loves her dad, and the data is screaming at her that his job is incredibly dangerous. Subodh tries to comfort her, explaining that her mother married him fully knowing this reality, and that her friend's father is a hero whose sacrifice inspires others. But then Vidhi asks this profound, just totally heartbreaking question. She asks, "How can I ever shut down my fear? I want you to be safe." And man, this question is the perfect pivot point for this entire explainer, because she is asking the exact same thing we all ask when we're faced with the uncontrollable. How on earth do I stop being afraid of a future I can't predict? Let's see how her dad answers this in section 3, the illusion of safety and redefining risk and duty. Subodh gives his daughter this absolutely incredible lesson in risk assessment. He compares the danger of border combat to everyday road traffic. Think about it. We perceive combat as having this sky-high risk, which obviously it does. But isn't it a weird psychological quirk that we barely give a second thought to driving down the highway, even though, statistically speaking, everyday traffic causes far more lost lives? Does that reality stop people from getting behind the wheel? No way. Actually, vehicle sales just keep going up. Life is inherently risky, and absolute safety is kind of an illusion. We accept the lethal risks of driving every single day just so we can go about our lives. Yet we allow these more dramatic, perceived risks to completely paralyze us with fear. He takes it a step further to reframe his highly risky job. He tells her, "No one is safe until everyone is safe. We create that line of safety that no one can reach." Notice what he did there. He completely removes the lens of victimhood or passive danger. He isn't just some guy stuck in a dangerous place, he's part of a collective wall. He reframes his service not as this terrifying source of fear, but as a deliberate choice of sacrifice, a choice that literally creates the very safety the rest of the nation, including his own family, gets to enjoy. Which brings us to our final part, Section 4, Choosing Happiness Over Fear and the Stoic Solution to Anxiety. Subodh drops this incredibly profound piece of philosophy on his daughter. He says, "What is in my fate is not in my control, but how I think about tomorrow is in my control." I mean, that is pure stoicism right there. It's the absolute separation of uncontrollable external events from our highly controllable internal reactions. Subodh fully acknowledges the harsh reality he might not return. That's fate, and it's out of his hands. But the narrative he spins in his own head about that tomorrow, that is 100% his domain. He really emphasizes his own agency over his life's path. He tells Vidi that his life is dedicated to the nation, built on service and sacrifice. In fact, he flat out states he'd be happier going down facing bullets for his country than simply fading out from old age. Why? Because he actively chose a life of purpose. He isn't hiding from death, he's choosing exactly how he lives. And by completely owning that choice, he totally strips the fear away from it. Vidi tells him that she feels so incredibly safe when she's right there in his embrace. And Subodh gives her the ultimate key. He explains that even when he's thousands of miles away, that feeling of safety will stay with her whenever she thinks of him. Because safety isn't just about physical proximity, right? It's a mental state. To maintain it, he tells her, she has to shut down her mind's useless chatter. You know the chatter I'm talking about? That anxious, uncontrollable noise in our heads? The what-ifs, the only 28 days left, the spiraling thoughts about tomorrow. That useless chatter is exactly what blocks us from feeling the safety, love, and connection that's sitting right in front of us in the present moment. So, let's distill Subodh's mindset into some clear, actionable steps you can actually use. Next time you catch yourself dreading an uncontrollable future event, keep these points in mind. First, recognize what you cannot control. Whether that's fate, other people's actions, or the inherent risks of life, just let it go. Second, ruthlessly take charge of your thoughts about tomorrow. You are the author of that story. Third, look for safety not in absolute guarantees, but in connection, purpose, and memory. Fourth, catch yourself and shut down that useless mental chatter. Literally, when you hear yourself counting down to a bad thing, force the clock to stop. And finally, deliberately choose happy thoughts. Finding happiness in the face of uncertainty isn't being naive. As Subodh shows us, it's actually a really brave, conscious discipline. To wrap up today, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. Take a look at your own life, your own anxieties, and your own finite time. Are you living like Vidi, robbing yourself of present joy by counting down to your fears? Or are you living like Sandhya and Subodh, acknowledging that life has risks, but deliberately choosing to anchor yourself in the happiness of the present moment? Remember, the fate of tomorrow is totally out of your hands, but how you think about it today, that's entirely up to you. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Until next time, choose your thoughts wisely.